This video is going to be used to demonstrate how to make a graph using Microsoft Excel from a data table. You might, if you wish, go view the video on making a data table first, and then this would be the second step, making a graph from the data table. Now keep in mind, for your trebuchet experiments you need to have both the data table and the graph, and that's typically the case in any scientific lab report that you're going to create. Now all of the information in this data table is nice to have in a lab report. However, I only want to graph the averages. So I want to graph the averages as they are affected by the counterweight mass. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my cursor up to the graphing button. I'm going to click on Chart Wizard. Once I click on Chart Wizard, it pops up with a variety of different charts that I can have. Now, because this data does show a trend, I'm going to choose a line graph, and I have a variety of different line graphs to choose from. You can choose whichever line graph you'd like. Typically, just choose the one in the upper left and hit Next. Once you've hit Next, you're going to find the data range. Now, only use the data range if you are going to use data that's right next to each other in your spreadsheet. But if you can see, the counterweight mass is over here in column D, and the average is in column I. So I'm not going to be able to choose data range. I have to click the tab that says Series. Now when my tab comes up for Series, I'm going to have to click Add, and I can call it, I can give it a name if I'd like. I don't happen to need to because I'm only going to have one line. The name is what's going to change up here where it says Series 1. I will just put a name in there so that you can see things change as you enter them in your text boxes. You can see now that average is up there as the name of the series. Since we don't need a key because we only have one line, it's not necessary that you put a name there. And for values on the y-axis, I'm going to click this little button that shows the spreadsheet, and I'm going to select my average because the average is the dependent variable. That's the thing that's changing based on the counterweight mass. So I'm going to click that button again, and you can see that a line is already there. And then now I need x-axis labels. So I'm going to click the button for x-axis, and I'm going to choose counterweight mass as my x-axis labels. So now you can see that my counterweight mass is labeled here on the bottom, 8, 16, 24, 32, and 36. And then my y-axis is labeled with centimeters. Now that I have my line established, I'm going to click Next, and I'm able to fill in some chart titles. Typically speaking, you're just going to want to use the same title that you use for the data table. So I'm going to say projectile distance based on counterweight mass. My x-axis label then is going to be mass in grams. Make sure you put the label and the unit. And then my value of y-axis is going to be distance and then centimeters. And again, you can see as I make those changes, they change up here on my sample graph for what it's going to look like. I can then, of course, change what the axes will look like. I can change things around to make things appear or disappear. Generally speaking, you probably just want to leave it the way that it is. You can add grid lines vertically and horizontally. You can see, though, of course, when you start checking things and things start to appear, that they get fairly cluttered. So I would suggest that you don't do that. When you click on Legend, choose the box that says Show Legend, and notice that the legend disappears. We do not need a key for this graph because there's only one line. Leave the data tables or the data labels alone, and leave the data table alone. We don't need to show the data table. When you're done, just choose Next, and it's going to ask you where you want to put the graph. You can create an entirely new sheet, or you can just put the chart as an object in this sheet. And generally that's the default selection. Just click Finish. Now once you have clicked Finished, you can click on this chart and move it around. You can also resize the chart using these little tabs on the bottom. But once you have this set and it's selected, you can then just right click, copy it, go into your Trebuchet computer template, scroll down, and where it says insert graph and data table here, then you can just copy and paste it into the chart. You can also do the same with your data table. If we go back to our data table, highlight it, copy, we can go back to our computer template and then insert our graph here as well, our data table there. Now it's important to note when we're back here on our Excel spreadsheet, if you go ahead and change these numbers, notice that the average changes and so will the line. This line and these averages will now change whenever you change this information. So if you wanted to, you could basically set up one data table and just continually tweak it for each individual data table that you need. Once the average functions are set and once you have a graph, and you just go in and change the titles and work some things out. The same data table and graph can be used for all four of the required inserts into your Trebuchet computer template.